to Capstone's Business Building webinar. My name is Maureen, and I am your webinar facilitator. Today's webinar is titled 3 Growing Cybersecurity Threats You Must Protect Against Now. How to avoid being a victim of a devastating ransomware attack, bank fraud, negative PR, or data breach lawsuit. Before Sitima and Matt start their presentation, I want to quickly tell you how this call will work, as the rules are just a little bit different from our past webinars. First, the lines are muted, meaning you can hear us, but we cannot hear you. We have a lot of prepared content to cover, so there may not be time for questions at the end. Your questions are important to us, though, so please type any you have in the form on your screen, and if we run short on time, we'll email the answers to you after the webinar. Sitima and Matt, you may start your presentation.
Oh, thanks, Maureen. Matt, you on the call?
I am. Thank you, Maureen.
Thanks, Maureen. And thank you all for taking the time out of your busy day to be with us. I know how busy you are, and we are committed to making the next 60 minutes extremely valuable. It's not going to be a technical seminar, no geek speak. That is, we have other seminars that Matt would love, who's our CTO, would love to be on that call. But on this one, it's going to be a little bit different. We're going to give you practical ideas on what is going on in the criminal underworld, and more importantly, what you can do to protect yourself and your business. So let's get started. All right. So what we're going to cover on this webinar, number one, is the number one security threat to your business that most antivirus, firewalls, and all these other security protocols that we all have in our businesses, hopefully we all have them, really can't protect against.
We're going to talk about the shocking truth about bank fraud, the idea that you may or may not be as protected as you think you are from what the bank is responsible for should your data be compromised.
That's right. And 3, why firewalls and antivirus software are useless against the new threats that are happening today. And lastly, how mobile phones and cloud applications are seriously jeopardizing the security of an organization and what to do to protect yourself. So here's the reality. Most of you are already using cloud computing and already have employees using mobile devices to work. It's a trend that is not showing any signs of slowing down. We all love them, right? However, most of you are adding on these elements in a slapdash haphazard way instead of being smart and strategic about it. And because of that, you are exposing yourself to expensive mistakes and to unnecessary risks. And hang on. If you hang on till the end of the presentation, we're going to give you a free dark web scan for your employee credentials and passwords to see if any of them ended up on the dark web. This is normally, we charge $195 for this kind of scan service, but we're going to show you at the very end how you can request yours for free. Just before we get started, a little bit about Capstone. Mike Fowler is actually the founder of Capstone, and he wanted a business where he worked for another IT company, and he saw the pain that people had when they had IT issues. They didn't call because they would get another bill. So his whole vision for Capstone is that he wanted to offer a service catered towards businesses that better align with clients where neither Capstone nor the client profited from having computer issues. So we work in a fixed fee model. And for me, I used to work at GM, and I left my job because I wanted to come to Capstone and really focus on customer service. I mean, we're an IT company, but at the end of the day, it's really about customer service and creating a culture where employees truly loved and were empowered to be their true self. And since then, Capstone has grown to be We're grown and where we manage over 4,600 computers and servers. We have several locations. We're a Rochester top 100 company. And we have a very different model than most IT providers. Like we said, it's a very customer-focused customer service at a fixed fee, so we don't profit from your problem.
Over the last year, there's been a significant increase in the sophistication, frequency, and severity of cybercrime attacks, fully covering in a minute. Because of this, we've been watching these trends and putting in place technologies to protect our clients. But many of the things that worked a couple of years ago, even 2 or 3 years ago, are no longer effective against the new threats. Plus, the attacks are becoming more frequent, more vicious, and carrying much bigger consequences. This is why we're talking to you today. This is a very real and very serious threat. In this FBI report, the number of cybercrime complaints is rising. You can see how sharply that graph goes up at the very top. The bottom, or I'm sorry, the total losses at the very top is rising. At the bottom, you can contrast that to the number of complaints. What this is showing is that while the number of cybercrime issues that the FBI is seeing is rising, the total damages is rising even faster. So the average amount of any single cybercrime issue is increasing significantly. Attacks are becoming more vicious and more frequent. For the first time in history, cybercrime is now the most prevalent type of crime against businesses. There are 137.5 million new malware samples. We're at 25 million already in 2019. And in 2018, wow, 93%, most malware was polymorphic. And polymorphic is just a way of saying that the malware changes itself to try and avoid detection.
So let me ask this question, like, what is this number? What does this number mean? So this number is actually the cost, the average cost for a cyber attack on a small business. But that number doesn't even encompass all the costs of a data breach to your organization, such as, the embarrassment, the cost of protecting the employee and client data, reputational damage, maybe loss of credibility. Think about your competition, right? And loss of clients. What if clients get upset that you weren't able to keep their data safe? Lawsuits, legal fees, compliance lawsuits. So there's a lot of, and then sometimes even when you pay the fee, like for a ransomware, you may not even get your data back, or the data that they give you back may be corrupted and you never get that data back. So these are all the additional damages on top of what a data breach could cost you in business. So if it is so common, then why don't we hear more about these attacks? Well, many people do not report security incidents. Maybe they're embarrassed. They don't want to let people know that they got hacked. Some don't even know they've been hacked until like we go in and we will do a threat assessment, and then we'll find that there is active attacks going on their computers and server, and they didn't even know about it. The people are afraid of PR, that they don't want to really let their clients know or have clients find out that their data was compromised. Legal ramifications. This is some of the reasons why people don't talk about it. So let me give you a brief history lesson in crime, which will show you why this is happening. In the olden days, the cybercrime business was pretty simple. You bought a gun or a knife and you hid out in a dark alley, and if somebody was walking by, you would jump out and say, "Stick them up," and you take their money. Startup costs and overhead were low, and if you didn't get caught, you'd be okay. But of course, just like any business owner, criminals started thinking, how can I grow my business? Of course, technology answered that question. Trains came along, and instead of robbing one person at a time, you could rob 200 to 300 people at a time. And robbing trains was a far more lucrative catch than robbing individuals because these trains were crossing remote areas where they weren't recognized police forces. Second, individuals who were wealthy enough to afford a train ticket were worth robbing, and they were rounded up and sitting in a single convenient location. Today, thanks to advancements in technology and an ever-increasing trend of storing financial and personal information on third-party cloud platforms, the new train robberies are now cybercrime related. Think about it. If a criminal wanted to rob 100,000 people at once, they couldn't do it the old-fashioned way. Today, all is needed is a hack into a single large platform, and they can use advanced technology to instantly rob millions. And they are, as you can tell by the increasing number of attacks that make the news every day. I don't know if you guys remember the JP Morgan hack, the credit card hack. It wasn't just one person stealing a credit card. It was one person or a small group of people who stole tens of millions. I think it was estimated like 80 million personal credit cards and 7 million small to medium businesses in one fell swoop. Think about that. Never in the history of mankind has one person or small group of people been able to rob so many so quickly in one attack. And some of you might recall the Equifax hack, right? So you might say, so what? What does it have? How can this actually be used to hurt me? Well, people have been shown that out of the 147 million people that were hacked in this attack, criminals used this data to open credit cards, take out loans in people's names. They stole tax refunds by filing a return on people's names. And this is where a lot of the phishing attacks started, the phishing scams with the bank accounts and the email, from this one attack. And cybercrime is thriving, and it's a growing business, not just a few guys in a garage hanging out. Anything you might need to steal data and rob people can be purchased. You can now buy credit card details, social security numbers, and a number of other programs that is accessible, and you can pretty much become a cyber criminal in an instant.
Yeah, you don't need to be an expert hacker to go in and buy this. You can someone can learn how to do this quickly. It's not just a small subset of people who can figure it out. It's anyone with enough motivation and free time.
Matt, I think we're in the wrong profession, because even an amateur can make $80,000 per month stealing and selling data.
Wow.
So what is enabling them? I mean, it's a relatively easy business to set up. And there's hundreds of websites that sell you exploit kits and how-to information and how to get started. There's malware programs that you can run. Internet of Things. Everything is becoming connected, has now a connection to the internet, like my car, my furnace. Everything has internet connection. And there's a lot going on. So your local police and the FBI, everybody's overwhelmed. And then there's the dark web. And in the dark web, you can get to so much of this malicious data, and people are doing a lot of activity that is illegal in the dark web. And for those of you who may not know what the dark web is, think of the internet as a giant iceberg. The top of the iceberg is what we all love and use. You know, it's whenever we want to go buy something on Amazon or Google something, it's the top of the iceberg. The middle part of that iceberg think of it as the intranet. It's the part that we don't really have access to within outside of our own company, like government or our own intranet. And then the very bottom of this iceberg is the dark web. This is where all the malicious activity is happening. It is very hard to get to, and you can pretty much there's auctions going on. You can buy all sorts of credit cards and things like that, and it's all being sold on the dark web. And every time one of our passwords and username gets stolen, it's good chances ending up on the dark web for sale.
So you might be thinking, well, I'm just a small business. I'm not Target. I'm not JP Morgan. Who would want to hack me? Wrong. These larger companies have very expensive and very sophisticated security systems. They have entire departments watching their security. They are not easy to hack. If even they're getting hacked with all of the defenses they have in place, getting into your business is a cakewalk. You're a bigger target than these larger institutions for that reason. Even though the prize not be as big, you're an easier target for them to get into. And since cyber criminals have so many automation tools, they can make a large sum of money by targeting multiple hundreds or thousands of smaller businesses without needing to break into JP Morgan, without needing to break into Chase or another big organization.
Matt, it's really interesting because how many, sorry, Matt, it's just interesting to point out that how many times have me and you got into, like on a sales call, gone in to see a company, a prospect, and we find like they say, you know, we're not that worried about security, you know, who's going to target us, right?
And really the answer to that is you're not being targeted specifically. The hackers are targeting everyone, and the companies without defenses are the ones getting broken into.
Good point.
So money is not the only thing that these criminals are after. They can be after your client data, your client lists. They can use your server processing power to steal credit cards, to send spam email, and really just for the fun of it, to be able to say, I broke into this company and brag to all their friends about it. And in some cases, there's either political or social ideology involved, trying to break into a organization that represents a cause that they don't agree with. And in some cases, even espionage. If you're a corporation, you might want to break into one of your competitors and steal corporate secrets. So just because you aren't that worried about your information being stolen, your customers are. Your customers are entrusting you with their critical information, and if you get breached, no customer is going to be very happy with the answer that you didn't have the budget for it, or you didn't think you were a big target. Don't underestimate the importance of addressing and protecting yourself from this threat. In the financial and reputational ramifications, not to mention the aggravation, business interruption, and anxiety this brings, is being routinely underestimated. Here's a little fact. Most fire alarms are sold to people who have had a fire after they've lost everything. Most home security systems are sold the same way, after someone has already broken into their house and shaken up their sense of security, upsetting their wife and kids, and all of those people never thought it would happen to them, which is why they didn't have an alarm system on the house.
And one single breach, Matt, can produce hours of extra work for your already overburdened employees, right? Employees are not sitting around twiddling their thumbs with nothing to do. So if what we've seen is it's not days, if not weeks of downtime, and irate clients, and stop production, cash flow disrupted by down systems, inability to service the clients and take orders. possibly even the inability to make payroll if your payroll account is compromised and the funds are gone. And all of this will end up in your office. Now, let's talk about the 3 biggest threats to your organization right now and how to stop them. Matt?
So if you asked me what the number one threat to your business is, the answer is your employees. And it's not necessarily intentional. Even good employees can make mistakes by deleting things, clicking on a phishing email, logging into a Facebook page that ends up being a fake. Employees can use free and unsecured file sharing applications. How many of you have employees that have opened Dropbox or some other file sharing program on a company PC? And who knows what's being shared out from them? And with more and more employees using their personal devices for work, like checking email or accessing corporate data, your network is now outside of the corporate firewall. It's at your employee's house. It's wherever they're using their mobile device or where they accidentally leave their mobile device. Your data is all over the place. So disgruntled employees, someone you fired or you've let go non-amicably, has a huge threat. Someone who you let go might still have Excel data of client lists on their home PC or a USB thumb drive with corporate data on it. And if you have a falling out with them, there's not too much that stops someone from taking that client list and bringing it to a competitor or leaving it on the internet just for fun.
And, I think like the insider data breaches don't get the same attention on the news as cyber attacks caused by hackers, but inside attacks are a real threat. And the threat is growing. The FBI told us that increased use of cloud computing means that employees are now better able to steal, delete, or manipulate a company's data. Simply put, an insider data breach is easier to pull off now than it was ever before.
Yeah, accidentally or on purpose. And all of these file sharing applications we're talking about, Dropbox being the most common example we see, that's called shadow IT, and it's when your employees or department managers start taking IT into their own hands, signing up for some web-based service and installing it without your knowledge. And all of a sudden, your corporate data is someplace that you don't even know, on a service you don't even know that you're using. You don't know how much of your company's data is out there, and more importantly, you don't know how secure that service may or may not be. So I'm sure a lot of people here have email on their phones. I know I do. Almost everyone uses it to access your corporate network. How many of you have a password on your phone if you have email on it? I bet not everyone. And one laptop or one mobile device stolen every 53 seconds. And even if they're not stolen, you can always leave them at the airport or grab the wrong one when you get through the security line. When that happens, the cost of that isn't the cost of replacing the hardware. That's a relatively minor thing. It's the uncertainty of knowing whether there was data on that device that's now missing, or worse, in the hands of a criminal. 80% of the cost of a lost laptop is from that data breach. And if you're in an industry with regulatory obligations, that might be a reportable data breach.
Wow.
So this is a story of someone who didn't think that this type of thing could happen to them. Story from a man named Michael Daughtry, who is CEO of LabMD, a successful small business doing a couple $1 million in revenue at the time. A good employee installed a file sharing program on his PC, one of those music download and upload things. Now, he shouldn't have been doing that in the first place, but that wasn't what did them in. The folder that they were sharing their music from to this program also had company data in it. So instead of just uploading the latest album from whatever artist they were listening to, now company data was accessible to anyone else on this network as well. This led to a data leak, and the lawsuits that came from this data leak, the FTC got involved, became relentless. Completely shut down the person's business, all because someone who didn't realize they were doing anything wrong innocently forgot to check a box in a program. There's a real risk here, and these things really happen.
Yeah, and Matt, this is such a scary but a story that people need to read. So if you're on this call, if you just want to Google, it's on Bloomberg.com, and the name of the company is LabMD. If you search for that, you will find the story.
So there are 350,000 new malware threats released per day. And malware attacks rose 79% in the last year. Think about that. You can't just think that a simple firewall and antivirus is a good enough defense these days. With the proliferation and sophistication of these attacks, there's no way that you can stop all of them. Having a firewall and antivirus is like trying to stop a tank with a squirt gun. Writer once asked a literary agent, what kind of writing pays the most? Her answer was simple: ransomware. Or ransom notes. And yeah, actually, ransomware might have been more accurate. I bet that pays pretty well.
Right.
And really, the truth is, if you're a criminal doing this, you don't have to succeed that often. You only need to get through 1 out of 100 PCs or businesses that you try to attack with these ransom attacks. And if a few pay, you don't have to do any more work for quite a while. So malware on smartphones is increasing as everyone has iPhones, everyone has an Android phone. And while it used to be more of a theoretical attack or an infection vector, we see smartphone malware all the time. And there are now antivirus programs for malware. Think about how many of your employees have iPhones, how many have Androids, and all of them are more than likely accessing corporate data on the same account phones that they're logging into Facebook with or downloading apps with that they may or may not trust, or that you, more importantly, may or may not trust with your corporate data. And government fines are escalating. So if a device was lost or stolen, the data wasn't encrypted, like in the theoretical, I left my laptop at the security line we just talked about, you might have a data breach law, data breach violation. You might have to report that. If you're HIPAA, you might have to report that. If you're PCI compliance, depending on exactly what regulatory bodies you are subject to, you might have to announce to the world that you had a data breach, not only on top of losing the value of the laptop. Easy solution to that, encrypt your laptops.
Nice. I think the security threat number 3, a lot of people don't realize, but it's increasingly getting worse, is bank fraud. And we were recently talking to some of our local community banks here. We frequently do joint seminars with our community banks here, and the length of different things they have to do now to protect their clients, but they get things all the time, and they have to usually now call the client to verify that they indeed authorized this transaction, because that's what people are doing. And if there is a breach, just so everybody knows, the FDIC does not protect you from bank fraud, and the bank is not responsible for getting your money back once stolen. So check with your bank, because there's different rules, different products they have available for business accounts, and it's not always the same as your personal account. And met, I think, on, banks are, there's a lot of cybercrime cases, right? And in some cases, the banks are going after it and winning, but, maybe sometimes you have to pay the bank's legal fees.
Yeah, and so the idea that the banks are not responsible for reimbursing you for cyber attacks or for fraudulent activities has been tested in court, and the banks have come out and won these cases. So it's not just a hypothetical law on the books. That's what's really happening. When these cases come to trial, it's found that you, the business, are responsible for that fraudulent activity. The bank is not, and the FDIC has no protections against that. One thing that can help a little bit is to use credit cards for things as opposed to debit cards, because the credit card companies often do have some protections built into their agreements.
And for banks, like if your bank has options where they will send you an email alert, also signed up for maybe a text alert. Also, maybe you sign up that they call you before they actually authorize, any withdrawals. So there's different protections that you can sign up for. And when your business falls victim to a cyber attack, depending on what happens, the thing is, you will be blamed, right? People will not be like, okay, so I have sympathy for you. They're going to say, okay, why didn't you put the right things in place? And you might be questioned, investigated to see, why didn't you keep that data safe? And then you may need to notify your clients that you exposed their data to cyber criminals, or at least you were hacked to losing your files. And you got to let them know that some of their projects might be delayed. And if the news gets wind of this, there might be damage control you have to do for your reputation, and the cost then for restoring the data and your work can very quickly add up. So how do you protect yourself, right? As a CEO, like, what are the things you should be doing to keep your employees and your clients' data safe? So there's 3 steps. Step 1, get a threat assessment done. That threat assessment is going to tell you what you have in place that is good, what do you have in place that has is exposing you to security gaps, and things like backup. Are your systems truly backed up? Sometimes we go in and we look at a client's environment, a prospect's environment, and they think they have a backup, and then we find out that the backup can get ransomware viruses on it, where the backup will be no good either if they get attacked. So make sure you get a threat assessment with all those things done, and then find out your exposure, your risk exposure.
Step 2 is to create an action plan and implement it. So based on the results of the threat assessment, determine what areas you're weak in, what areas of your systems need improvement, and then actually implement improvements in those areas. If you find that you don't have a backup, get a better backup. If you find that you don't have adequate security in place on your PCs, get better software or fix policies so that you do. I've seen plenty of cases where there was an action plan and it wasn't implemented, and then a breach occurred.
And step 3, nothing is set it and forget it. You have to have ongoing maintenance. That is the approach to security. Every quarter, we recommend our clients do a vulnerability assessment where we are going in and we're testing our own work to find out any gaps. And you have to always be vigilant and maintain and monitor your systems. So we have some great news for anybody listening today. The very first step is absolutely free. You are going to do a free threat assessment and dark web scan for your organization. In this assessment, you will know if you and your employees' login credentials are being sold on the dark web, if your IT systems and data are truly secure. We're going to give you a health score for your network to determine areas that are outdated, unsupported, slow, problematic. And then finally, if your current backup would allow you to restore 100% of your data and be up and running fast if ransomware did lock all your files, so you don't have to pay ransom. And we're also going to give you the free dark web scan for your business credentials and employee passwords. This is a $195 value. Two things you need to know. I'm sorry, we're also going to give you a second bonus. We're going to give you a guide so you can tell your employees how to create, manage, and remember hacker-proof passwords. And this is a $95 value as well. So two things you need to know. There's absolutely no obligation to buy or do anything when you request the risk assessment. The only caveat is that we can't do too many of these. So we are going to limit it to number of that we can do per month. So there is no heavy sales pressure to buy anything or to work with us. And of course, some of you may decide that you want to hire us and work with us, but that will be your decision. All we want to do is provide you with a lot of value, answer your questions, show you some ways to be smarter and more strategic about your IT investments, and for many of you, uncover some big risks that you're exposing yourself to that you might not have been aware of. And finally, this is an application process for this consultation, and that's because we want to first make sure that we can help you indeed. And number two, there's some information that we will need to get about you and your organization before we schedule the first meeting so that we can prepare for our time together and make our meeting as productive as possible. So this is how you can apply to receive this free offer. You can go to www.capstoneitinc.com/cyber. Again, that's capstoneitinc.com/cyber. I know all of us are extremely busy and there is enormous temptation to just say, okay, I got the information, I'm good, and just not worry about it and dismiss it. But that is undoubtedly the easy choice, but the easy choice is rarely the right choice. This I can guarantee at some point you will have to deal with a cybersecurity event. Hopefully you'll be brilliantly prepared for it and experience only a minor inconvenience at most. But if you wait and do nothing, we can practically guarantee this will be a far more costly, disruptive, and devastating attack that will happen to your business. You've spent a lifetime working hard to get where you are today. Don't let some low-life thief operating outside the law in another country get away with taking that from you. And certainly don't hope that your IT guy has you covered. Get the facts and be certain that you're protected. So how do you apply? Go to www.capstoneitinc.com/cyber, and we'll take a look at every application that we get in. Maureen, that's our prepared content. Did any questions come in?
Yes, Sitima, there are a few questions. The first one is, do the dark web scans that are being offered by Experian and Identity Guard today, are they the same as the dark web scans that Capstone is offering?
Oh, great question. So the Experian ones, those are fantastic. So if you have like a Google account, like a personal Yahoo account, Gmail account, you can put that in Experian, and they will tell you if your personal credentials has been stolen, if they're on the dark web. The dark web credential monitoring and the scanning that we're offering on this webinar is for businesses. So if your business, let's say, is IBM.com, we're going to put that in our service, and it will tell us all the employees within your company with that same domain name, how many of their credentials are found on the dark web. Because remember, Maureen, some people use the same username and password, not just for their work, but let's say for their Facebook account, their LinkedIn account, and Dropbox account. And every time one of these places gets hacked, it ends up on the dark web. And if you're using the same credentials to log in for work, then you're compromising it. So so we'll give you a full listing of all your employees' credentials that are found on the dark web.
Thank you so much. The next question is, how do I get my staff to buy into the security training that I choose?
Oh, yeah, because, everybody's busy, right? So when you tell your employees, hey, go take the security training, it's like falls to the bottom of their list. So I think for what we've seen, what Matt and I have really seen at Capstone is that if you're going to make the employee security training like really stick, you got to make it part of your culture, and it has to come from the top. So it's really the CEO or the owner kind of basically saying, this is going to be part of your performance review, whether you've taken this training or not, and really make it so that everybody in the company does it. And you can either get the training delivered in person, or you can do like what Capstone provides, which is a online service, because it's a lower cost way to do it online. And every time you have a new employee join your company, you can send them to the portal to take the training. And the other thing is, if you make it a little bit of a competition, where like what ours does is gives each employee a score, like where they are in terms of the other employees, and so they all try to beat each other. So if you kind of like do that, then that creates a little bit more competition and engagement. So those are some of the things. And then lastly, I say, do some simulated phishing attacks where you're sending them an email that looks like it's coming from LinkedIn, but it's really not. It's a controlled phishing email. And if somebody clicks on it, then a video should come up saying what they did wrong, what they should watch out for. So, and it has to be continuous, and you have to continuously be talking about it.
Perfect. Thank you. The last question that came in today is, I don't know what should or needs to be in an action plan. Should a breach occur at my business? Where do I start?
So from an action plan standpoint, we just did the threat. Like if you take us up on our offer and we do the threat assessment, we're going to identify, we're going to take a look under the hood, we're going to ask you a bunch of questions. And from that, we're going to give you a comprehensive result of, we're going to give you actually an executive summary. So there's really not a lot of geek speak that you have to go through, because I know you're busy. So we're going to tell you like where we see the gaps. And then part of that assessment, we're not going to leave you hanging. We are going to give you an action plan of step 1, step 2, step 3, what you need to do to fix those gaps. And now most people don't have unlimited budget, and you might say, well, I can't take care of all of these things at once. And that's for that reason, we're going to kind of give you also an idea of the risk level. Like, is the impact to your organization, and we can discuss that. Is it high, medium, low? And then you can make your decision based on that, whether you want to assume that risk and leave it open for now, or is it something that needs to be addressed right away. But we can have that discussion and give you that guidance.
Thank you so much, Sitima. That's all I have.
All right, great. Well, thank you. I think that's all the time we have. Maureen, you can wrap up the call.
All right. Thank you all for attending today's webinar, Growing Cybersecurity Threats You Must Protect Against Now. We look forward to helping you. Have a wonderful day.